Imagine turning on your TV or scrolling on social media and you're just absolutely bombarded with false information, biased reporting, and honestly just straight up abuse. Well, welcome to the current state of sports media. We're unfortunately subjected to things like negative and abusive coverage of these athletes, including sexism, personal attacks, and fake news across every single platform, even ESPN's areas that we could have trusted and did trust for so many years. So we're going to talk about all of those problems and more as we dissect the issues in sports media and possibly how we can fix them as well. First and foremost, I really do want to discuss just the negative connotation and negative reporting of nearly everybody now. I mean, many athletes and current sports figures are subjected to just harsh criticism that crosses way beyond into the personal attack. Think about how they cover Aaron Rodgers forever and how they cover Jacob Trouba this past offseason and really full season. It's just not okay. Even if you don't like these players or the athletes, whatever it is, it's not okay. And talking about some examples from just the two players that I named, Aaron Rodgers has been honestly abused by the media forever. It's been 20-something years now, from the coverage starting from his draft to how they discussed his family life over 18 years in Green Bay, how they covered him during the pandemic. There's nobody, in my opinion, that gets more abused in media than Aaron Rodgers. Even if you don't agree with his opinions or how he goes on all these podcasts or shows and explains how he feels or how he talks, it doesn't matter. If you're a professional media outlet, you can't be putting out these personal attacks towards people. It just completely degrades your product. And why I brought up Jacob Trouba is because he's a perfect example of someone that isn't polarizing, that doesn't put themselves out there into the podcast or media world like Aaron does, or says controversial things. And he doesn't. He really doesn't. He plays his game. As a human, he seems like an unbelievably amazing human, honestly. Charity, work, everything you want out of a captain or a model athlete. Trouba does. On the ice, you may not like him. I understand he headhunts, and I understand that you may not like an enforcer, or even if you're a Rangers fan. This is what made me really feel so strongly about this, is that you start naming his wife and throwing in headlines, and you just don't do that. I just really don't understand how that's become the norm, how people are okay with things like that. And it's not random accounts or Barstool. Even Pat McAfee, like, it's an entertaining show. It's like, these are actual reputable, or what were reputable publications. The New York Post, New York Times, like, these are outlets that are supposed to be giving us the most factual and most professional information, but instead they're putting out hit pieces on different athletes and their family members, which is really the big thing of why I brought up these two individuals specifically, is that it's reaching way beyond the athlete, it's reaching way beyond their play, and it's about basically personally attacking their family. And to me, as someone that enjoys media, studied media, and really wants to be in this media space, I try my best on this channel to really speak mainly positively about people and not really talk about the negative stuff. I can't comprehend reaching in and talking about their family members, Rodgers' broken family, and talking to his brother and interviewing his brother, and Jacob Trouba reaching in to blame his wife for why the Rangers aren't getting rid of him. I can't really understand it, and the quality of media just continues to move down and towards the personal attacks. So we'll talk more about that as we move into the next section as well, which is just blatant sexism, as the WNBA continues to rise up in popularity. The WNBA has long been subjected to blatant sexism in media coverage. It's definitely not just now. The female athletes receive just less respect and recognition compared to the males, and the disparity is evident in the way stories are framed and the language used in reporting. The WNBA and women's sports in general have long been subjected to just negative, kind of being put down. The men are up here and the women are way down here, and it's evident in the way that people cover the WNBA right now. As it continues to grow, if you're not taking note of these things, I'm surprised, because you look at how people like Caitlin Clark, Angel Reese, Cameron Brink, just the rookie class specifically, 3 players, and how they're being covered. It's not okay. Coverage of women's sports and the WNBA specifically is focused way more on their personalities, how they personally look, than how they're competing on the court. And a former professor of mine, Lindsay Darvin, wrote for Forbes that traditional pundits that have been covering men's sports forever really do struggle to report on women's basketball effectively, because there's an intense focus on the players' behavior and their controversies rather than the on-court play, and it's a direct result of decades of undervaluing women's sports. And turning the page back a year or 2 years when Angel Reese was on LSU, and she was dealing with many of the same similar stuff when her and Caitlin Clark started their rivalry. Reese often became the target of criticism, and some of it with racist and sexist undertones. Reese said that she's been attacked so many times, death threats, she's been sexualized, threatened, just so many many things, and she feels that she's stood strong every time and continued moving on. And if you look at her career now and the trajectory, it just keeps moving up and up. So she's not wrong. And the sexist reporting really does make a significant negative impact on the future of women's sports and the present women's sports. Not only is it just disgusting to be swiping your phone and seeing just terrible reporting and focus on the wrong things from these media pundits that on Angel Reese and Caitlin Clark, but imagine you're a young female, or you're in elementary school, middle school, and you're scrolling or you're on TV and you're watching ESPN and they're talking about just the wrong things, just terrible things about Angel Reese and Caitlin Clark and people that you look up to, people that are your model athlete and who you want to be like in the future. And how are these people and how are these young females going to actually pursue that and want to be in that position if they're seeing that their favorites are being put down like that? Why would you want to be in that position? And also, as Professor Darvin had stated, and also how I feel as well, it's just you continue to perpetuate the idea that the female sports or women's sports are below men, that they're weaker, they're even infantile is the word that Professor Darvin uses. And it's like, that's kind of how it feels and has felt for so long, that continuing to put those down is just crazy, especially at the level that we're seeing right now in all sports. It's every single level, men's, women's, college, professional, like every level is at the highest of athletics it's ever been, and it's going to continue to go up. So to continue to push that narrative that they're worse, that they're weaker, is just, it's inaccurate. It's just factually inaccurate right now. And that's not to say that Caitlin Clark and Angel Reese can go start in the NBA right now, but to cover them in a way that you're almost like an elementary school or middle school bully, like making fun of the girl that wants to play with you on the playground or in football and wants to play football with you guys or basketball. It's treated, that's how a lot of these pundits report. I just don't get it. And it's amazing that we continue to allow so many of these people to have a platform and just be blatantly sexist and racist right in front of everybody, and everyone's cool with it. So like I say, it's not these small publications, it's these major ones. And if you don't think that this negative coverage and this blatant abuse is not negatively affecting these athletes and coaches and their families, you're just wrong. Constant scrutiny and harsh criticism leads to anxiety, depression, and other mental health issues that affect overall performance and well-being both on and off the field. At the 2021 French Open, a new chapter in that relationship began when the second-seeded Naomi Osaka announced that to protect her mental health, she would not be taking part in mandatory post-match conferences. And after the ensuing controversy and a $15,000 fine, she withdrew from the French Open and later Wimbledon, saying that she often feels that people have no regard for athletes' mental health, and we're often being sat there and asked questions that we've been asked multiple times before, or asked questions that bring doubt into our minds, and I'm not just going to subject myself to that and people that doubt me. And in all the research, when talking to medical professionals, athletes, journalists, everyone involved in that space, the majority of athletes don't want to partake in post-game conferences, pre-game conferences even, and they feel that a lot of this is just them being peppered with negative questions or gotcha questions that are going to end up on a headline, and not good for their mental health. Imagine losing one of the biggest games of your life, and then you have to go answer to 50 people that couldn't care any less about how you're doing or how the game went, but just want to get the most amount of clicks and views on whatever they're writing.
You're getting a lot of fans here. A lot of them are female, and they want to know if you could date anyone in the world, who would you date?
They don't care about whether you're happy or their question is negative or abusive. They just want to get the most reviews. They want to make the most money and do well for themselves. But if you're putting someone down in the process of you going up, is that really beneficial? Do you feel great about yourself? And that's another thing. A lot of these reporters don't care at all about the quality of the work that they're putting out, as long as they're getting views and clicks. And that's where the false and fake news stories come in, and misinformation and disinformation, everything across the board. And that's where this next part of the video, it's probably one of my favorite or most crucial and most important parts of the video, I think. The rise of false stories and fake profiles online has become a significant issue because misinformation has spread rapidly and being accepted as truth by so many people. The phenomenon creates confusion and distorts public perception. In fact, an article from The Atlantic highlights how the decline in investigative journalism has led to a rise in clickbait and sensationalism. And the shift with the fake news and fake accounts on Twitter, like the Dove Climbing and ML Football, just two for example, and there's hundreds and thousands of others as well across Instagram, TikTok, Twitter. In fact, TikTok, NFL, and sports accounts are just crazy. People come up with the wildest narratives and fake news, I guess, for lack of a better word. But narratives is a big thing that I want to touch on in the fake news and fake stories and fake accounts and misinformation. It's that even if it's not so much a fake information or fake news, a lot of these sports centers and Fox News and whatever television or sports media, on social media, on YouTube, a lot of these people are pushing narratives. So while they're trying and claiming that they're speaking facts, which they may be, but they're rewording it and using things around the sentence. So if they use a direct quote, they're going to talk about it in a different way and then use the quote to push a narrative that even if you didn't mean it that way or it's taken completely out of context, as long as that quote is there, that's what people are going to see on social media. They're going to retweet. That's what they're going to believe in their head. And that's what they think about and go tell their friends. And it spreads like a wildfire very, very fast. And it's getting increasingly difficult to believe anything online at this point, especially in sports when you have all these fake insiders and just fake nonsense. I mean, people were saying that Caleb Williams and Aaron Rodgers wanted stakes in their team. So Caleb Williams coming out of the draft, his team apparently said that he wants a percentage in an NFL team, which he never apparently said when it came out later, that he never claimed that. The team never claimed that. And knowing that that's actually not even possible. And same with Aaron Rodgers when he came to the Jets. Guy took a pay cut, and we're going to talk about him possibly wanting equity in the team. Otherwise, he's not coming over here. These fake stories that come out end up pushing a narrative. And now in my head for a while, I was like, oh, well, he's a diva, or, he doesn't want to actually play in the NFL. It's, these things get put into your head that you go and run with and share with other people, or you just feel for the rest of your life. And it all comes from a fake story that they ran with on Twitter to ESPN and SportsCenter. I mean, we've seen everybody across the board get caught by I don't know how many different parody accounts, and it's just not okay. Stephen A., like the biggest guy in sports, has been caught using fake information from fake accounts. It's difficult when people aren't doing their due diligence or just want to put out a story to actually dive into who's tweeting that or where the story came from. And a lot of times you'll find out that it's fake, or that the narrative that they're pushing is not really how it was said or the context that it was in. Sports media is also just so oversaturated in general. They just refuse to do any sort of investigative journalism. They'll see something, they'll hear something and put it out. Be first, get the engagement. So all it's focused on is engagement rather than being correct or actually ethical in any capacity nowadays. And on top of that, originality just continues to dwindle, and that's why so many people, I think, are so obsessive with Pat McAfee, and that the older generations are being like, oh, this is the new way with him, because it's like, okay, it's something somewhat different. It's a different way to cover sports, and being truthful and not really BSing people at the end of the day, I think, is the biggest appeal of a show like that, is that it's not BSing you. It's not getting gotcha questions. It's not trying to put you in a bad position. It's like, yeah, people like that, and it's a refresher. So I'm hoping that that will be the future, kind of. I think that there's still going to be plenty of the engagement stuff that we see today, but I just hope that there's a little bit more of in-depth reporting that we haven't seen in a long time, especially from specific journalists. Like, a lot of people are not going to school to be journalists anymore. They're going to be social media people. In my opinion, we need the sports journalists. That's really the bread and butter of sports. These beat writers are falling victim of the same cycle and the same stuff that we've seen from everybody. It's really detrimental to the sports community because it undermines any credibility of sports journalism and deprives the fans of reliable and comprehensive coverage of their favorite players and teams. And it really is tough because in written journalism, many prominent publications have laid off a significant amount of staff, and it's left a void in a side of sports-related content that once flourished. ESPN, The Athletic, Sports Illustrated are just a few examples of outlets that have laid off journalists within the last year, and many have been caught using AI as well, replacing these people. And since then, the digital era of sports journalism and analysis has just continued to grow more powerful, and isn't always a bad thing, especially in some cases like when Fox Sports analyst Emmanuel Acho admitted to not caring whether the information he was sharing was fake or not. The flaws become clear. Higher quality coverage is essential, not just for the diehard fans to keep up with the ins and outs of their teams and players, but also to get casual fans interested and continue growing the game. The current state of sports media just absolutely detracts from actual sports and the athletes and their personalities, really, even though nowadays we try to dive more into them. I believe that we're actually taking them away and changing who they are. So how can we fix or really do anything? Do we have any impact on this? And yes, we very much do. We're the consumers of these things, so engaging in it is one thing, and then also maybe you're like me, you're watching this and you have a YouTube channel, or you're aspiring to be a reporter, or whatever the situation is. You have a duty to become a respectable and ethical member of the media. And that's where we move into the next section of how we can actually hold people accountable. It's very important to hold the media members accountable for their content, and it includes calling out and stopping support for those who engage in negative and harmful behavior, and instead focus on engaging with positive and ethical members of the media and community. You can also report and block these people that are providing false information or very negative and abusive content. I really do believe that if we continue to band together and report people that are doing these things, then maybe it'll put an end to it at some point. Even if it's not overnight, it's in the next few years that hopefully we progress in a much better way. Additionally, we do need some sort of media literacy understanding or programs. We need to explain to our family members, our friends, those that are way more media literate, need to share these things with those that are not around them. So it's all about your internal community and what you can do to positively impact their lives and their media, not just in sports, but in general, obviously, but sports for sure, around our town. Supporting those individual creators is so important, and the smaller ones as well. Hell, I appreciate you guys watching this, and if you've made it this long into the video, thank you so much, truly. I hope that you feel as passionate about this subject as I do. But supporting smaller creators and individualism can help actually bring in a more diverse group of individuals into a very specific area that's had very specific demographics for hundreds of years that have controlled this, and unfortunately brought it to where it is today, which is very negative and just abusive content that may be fake. Supporting diversification in sports media and holding the massive publications accountable is really the only way that we're gonna actually combat this. And one thing I have to stress before I end this video is the athletes that are creating their own podcasts or shows or becoming part of sports media, support them. Watch their stuff, understand their stuff, because I personally am just tired of people that have never played the sport or played sports past an elementary school level that are talking about these games and talking about these athletes like they are wrong about their own sport that they've gotten to the literal highest level of. Just because you're a journalist and you've watched a million games and studied the game doesn't mean that you know more than the person actually doing it. So I think that's a huge thing, is that if we really do support and continue to push athletes into sports media, former athletes, current athletes, into these media positions, I think it's going to continue to improve the overall quality of product. And I think it has definitely on YouTube, as many of you have seen in some of my latest video where I talk about athletes that have actually flocked to YouTube. I think it's going to continue to progress and improve the quality of sports media. Next thing though is for us as the consumers to improve it by not allowing fake news and sexism and racism and just terrible, negative and abusive content from these media journalists. So the door is open for all of us to make that change, and I really do hope that this video somewhat helped open your eyes to what we're dealing with and what our current product is and how we can actually help it and make a positive impact. So I know this was a long video, and truly I appreciate it so much if you made it this far into it. If you did enjoy, please make sure you hit the like button and subscribe for more content just like this. Share with your friends. Let's get this out there if you do agree with some of the opinions. If not, leave a comment down below on what you think. I love talking sports with everybody, so this topic is one that I really do want to discuss and one that I'm very passionate and care about. So definitely leave a comment down below or engage anywhere on any of my socials. Always happy to. You can also check out one of the 2 videos on the screen as well. One of them I mentioned earlier. It's athletes flocking to YouTube, so go check that out as I talk about a bunch of former athletes and current athletes even that run their own YouTube channels. And then this other one YouTube thinks you'll like. So I'll see you over there.